Welcome back to part 4 of our 5-part series this week, where we're looking at how to face leftover fears that are still lurking in your mind. Now, yesterday we looked at the fear that tries to convince you it's too late for you, that hope is gone. Today, we're going to be unpacking the fear that tied in with that false assumption that keeps you wound too tight, which we talked about last week. Keeps you thinking that you're on guard and that you're not safe. There's a fear that's underneath that you've come into agreement with, that's led to this assumption where you're telling yourself this, that you're not on guard and you're not safe. And this fear, it's going to exhaust you. It's going to drain the peace and joy from your life, and it will hurt your relationships. The fear is, it's me against the world. And there's some variations on this theme where we tell ourselves, life is threatening because it seems threatening. Predators are everywhere because it felt like it. I'm powerless and all alone, seemed like I was, and I'm going to get hurt again when I least expect it, because we were sucker punched multiple times. But when we take that fear, when we come into agreement with it, that it's me against the world, it can create all kinds of problems. And I remember dealing with this. I had this fear going on in my life, going back a lot of years. And in some respects, it predated the narcissist. And you might find things like this in your life too, that if you're really honest and you trace these things back, there's some root elements that predated the narcissist, but the narcissist seized on it and amplified it and really exacerbated it, really drove those messages home. So that it's me against the world thing, I made a variation of this and I wore it like a badge of honor. Because the story I told myself was, I don't need anyone or anything. I can take care of myself just fine. And that was just me trying to rationalize and justify and tell myself a story that made me feel like, I didn't need anything, but it was because I felt this fear along with some other things that led me to make that phony badge of honor. But when we have this fear that it's me against the world or any variation of that, it's going to control our perspective, and it's going to lead us to live in a very defensive and hyper-vigilant posture, of course, which is exhausting. It's going to cause us to be very easily provoked and reactionary. And we think that when we're dealing with this fear, and so we're being defensive, we're being vigilant, like we're on guard, we think we're protecting ourselves, but all we've done is made ourselves easily controlled, because all someone has to do is poke the right spot and we lose it. The fear rises up, fight, flight, or freeze is happening, so we're not in control, we're being controlled. So because we don't have healing in this area of our mind, the way we think, and our habitual thought patterns, as well as the wounded emotions in our heart, we're easily controlled. So we've got to deal with this. We have to learn to face this kind of stuff and deal with it. On top of that, living in this state is going to drain our immune system. Where we thought it was stressful before, well, we're just continuing the stress. The narcissist isn't even there, but we're still living in that stress. Like we're always on guard. We're always looking. That exhaustion, it just pulls us down physically. So if you're finding yourself sick a lot, there's probably something else going on there. And of course, it's going to steal our peace and our joy. On top of that, this is really tragic. It can hurt our good relationships because we're being unhealthy. Okay, we can't blame the narcissist anymore. We're doing this. We are perpetuating this problem. And this particular fear we're talking about today, it tends to partner up with the fear we're going to talk about tomorrow. So hint, hint, you might want to watch tomorrow. So how do we face this fear? Well, the first thing we need to do is evaluate what the truth is versus what's false, fact versus fiction, instead of jumping to conclusions. Because we are so reactive, we're not thinking things through. We're not processing it. We're not objectively looking at different sides of an issue. We're not giving the benefit of the doubt in things because perhaps we gave the benefit of the doubt to the narcissist over and over and over, and it got us in trouble. So we're afraid of experiencing that again, so we don't do it. We jump to conclusions, which is how we hurt those good relationships. And jumping to conclusions means that we're also making decisions based off of faulty premises, right? So we need to evaluate what is fact versus fiction. We also need to address our anger issues. And I get it. You may feel you're entitled to anger, and you are. I would be concerned if you weren't angry, because there's some stuff to be angry about. The problem is when you're stuck in it and you're making decisions that are fueled by anger. Anger serves a purpose. It's not a place you're supposed to live. It's not a way of life. They're certainly not serving you, those angry feelings, and you're not moving forward. So when we recognize we've got some anger that's there, maybe it doesn't seem like it, by the way. We might be like okay and happy and doing things, but again, you'll know it's there because it doesn't take much to just poke on it a little bit, or for someone to remind you of the narcissist or whatever, and here comes the anger, right? Or those fight, flight, freeze type things. So what we need to do is realize that anger is a secondary emotion. It really is. There's something underneath the anger that gives rise to the anger, which is the reaction to everything. So we need to identify what's the emotion under the anger. Is it betrayal? Is it embarrassment? What is it that's under the anger? Okay. Fears of various types. And once we identify that, then we can do something about it. So you'd want to learn the heart healing process to address these wounded emotions. Now, I go in depth with this in my Cinderella No More program and walk you through it step by step, because I have a very specific process to teach you that becomes a tool in your tool belt that you can use for these kind of situations where you're house cleaning from the past, and for anything that you bump up against in the future. You need to know how to handle your heart well. And you'll find that in Cinderella No More, which is inside the Academy. You can check the show notes for some more information. But that heart healing process is so important because that's the part that sets you free. Without that, you're just white knuckling, trying to control yourself, telling yourself, stay calm, don't get angry, and trying to reason your way through it. That'll only take you just so far. You haven't gotten to the root, and the root is usually in the heart. And then from there, you can deal with your thinking habits that emerged from the pain of that time too. You also want to evaluate, this is a big one, evaluate the story that you're telling yourself about what you've been through, or about the person you're dealing with, or the situation you face right now. Is it true? Maybe it seems like it's true. But now ask yourself another deeper level question. What percentage is true of the story you're telling yourself about this? And once you know what percentage is true, you can make a plan to address that portion of it in a healthy way. What is the situation? Instead of just acting on the whole thing is true and it's all the worst case scenario, maybe there's 50% of this is true, and 50% of this is this person disrespecting you. But maybe there's another 50% that's not accurate, or maybe that's you. Okay? Maybe it's 10%. But this is why we need to stop and evaluate this. What percentage is false is what's going to keep you on edge all the time. So if you're assuming it at the 100% level, even, inadvertently, you're just like defaulting into that, it's going to keep you on edge. It's going to keep you in this mode. Romans 12:21 says, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. See, if you succumb to this fear and you allow it to rule your perspective, you're being overcome by evil. And here's the thing, a notch deeper beneath that should make you go, whoa. By allowing this fear to control you, you're assuming that evil is stronger than God. Because, you feel like you're on your own, right? So you're not factoring the Lord into this equation. You're not leaning on him. You're not inviting him into the situation. You're operating in your own strength and in your own knowledge and assumptions, which, let's face it, when we do that, a lot of times we're off base with things, right? Isaiah 41:13 says, for I am the Lord your God, who takes hold of your right hand and says to you, do not fear, I will help you. So there's the key right there. The key is taking hold of God's hand. And sometimes we really struggle with that because of the thing we're going to talk about tomorrow. So join us tomorrow as we look at the fear that tends to partner up with the one we are talking about today. Because when we can get to the bottom of both of those and start turning things around, it unlocks other things for healing and wholeness and forward movement in our lives. All right? I'm so glad that you've joined me here today. And we're on this journey to provide some guidance and wisdom, to give you some challenge to grow, right? So keep your eyes on just being 1% better. Because some of these things that we're talking about are going to involve upending some things that have become conditioned responses, habitual responses, habitual ways of thinking and being that don't serve you. So if you just work on that 1% improvement each day, you're going to keep getting better and better and better. And 6 months from now, you'll look back and say, wow, I am viewing things from a very different light. So be sure to like and subscribe and share this episode to help others. Check out our show description because you'll find some links to some additional resources I think you'll find very helpful and enlightening. You can also email me at hello@AnnetteChesney.com. You've got questions, something you want to share, feel free to reach out and email me. So for right now, keep going because I promise you your best is yet to come. I'll see you tomorrow.